amazing. So the last one, kids-wise, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like is Narada is he your youngest one-to-one?
Yeah, and it has ever been at youngest. Like I think the youngest I had before that was like maybe like 16 when I started one-to-one with him.
Yeah.
Like, and he was like stepping into like his own ministry stuff at the end of his schooling experience. So yeah, to have like a 9, it's like, when did we start with him? Like it's 11 now.
Last year, maybe a year and a half you've had him for, and the growth, honestly. Sometimes he gives me a gospel uppercut, which is always great, but not really if you're mum.
Yeah.
But I think like, because I remember having this conversation with you, like how young is too young? How young is too young to talk about the Bible and to talk about God, and just I don't really know the entirety of your guys' conversations. Like sometimes Narada comes home and he tells me stuff, and then I'm like, oh, that's good that you talked about that. Yeah. But I'm gonna assume, correct me if I'm wrong again, that a lot of your conversations are based on God's word, but how he can apply it in his life, even though he's such a young person. So Narada acts like he's 21, guys, even though he's only 11, but he thinks he's 21. And I think his mental capacity is older, his maturity is older than his age. Yeah. And I think that's why you guys get along so well, to be honest. I know he respects you a lot, like an older brother. Awesome. And I know that, because there's just been like, the bullying instances and stuff like that. And I've tried to say the same thing that you've then told him, and he's come home and told me like, oh, Putterby said this. I'm like, wow, I was just telling you that, but okay, whatever. Yeah. Good. I'm glad you listened to it. So, and it's always been about God's word, like about turning the other cheek. Yep. Can't remember the verse off the top of my head, but it's in the Bible, guys, so just research that. And same with, what did he tell me? Was about life groups. Oh, that though we come to church, it doesn't have to be our church, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't have to be the building. Yeah, we can still go to life groups and do fellowship and talk about God's word and everything. And I said, but we go because we have to learn from the pastors. Like that's, and he's like, but I'm just saying, Mum, like you could go and do fellowship in smaller places instead of a big, because our church is actually growing and it's getting really huge, and I want to say ridiculous sometimes, to be honest, because sometimes you can't find a car park or a seat, but that's good because it's God. So worship team, I feel like they should know how much you actually love music, and I reckon it's like God, Beth, music. Yeah. Like literally how it goes. Yeah.
No, so definitely it's like been something I've watched my mum do it for so long. That was my experience growing up here at church, is that I'd just watch her and other people that I was close with. I was always involved in some way. Like we were like running like old school, like, those lamp projectors. Oh, yeah. Like those ones you see in like the 1980s, like, like those classic, get the little clear plastic slides out and flip over it. So that was like first exposure of like helping out, like with the words and, helping people sing together. Like that was such a thing that I love doing on car trips. Like I'd annoy the heck out of my brother because he's not like that musically inclined. Like there's a couple of things that he likes to do, like maybe play on the piano a little bit now, or, do that sort of thing, but it's not like outwardly expressive. Whereas like I have so much going in my brain and I'm like, I just need like an outlet or like something to help emotionally regulate as well. Like when I get stressed or like I just need time to like think about things or just emotionally process stuff. Like it's a really good spot to be in to find the right kind of thing that'll help me through whatever that is. So that's where I've like been really grateful to God to give me that community at school, out of school, at church, and especially church music because it's so unique in that way that it's not about yourself. It's actually putting yourself aside and, honoring God and honoring the people around you. So that's why I studied music, was really just to develop that love that I had for it. but then also use it to then, do kids ministry stuff, or to just get people excited about praising God in all sorts of ways. So that's been a huge thing. And something that really changed actually was when I was at the end of my music degree, I sort of had this moment where I thought I was going to maybe lose some hearing, because I had this operation done, and what it did is it messed with it in such a way that when it gets really quiet in a space, if we stopped talking right now and it was dead quiet, I'd be able to just hear this heartbeat, because that's what we got right now.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
But it was just so weird because you just can't switch it off, right?
Yeah.
So for me, mentally thinking about that, I'm like, God, I need to go to sleep, or I need to concentrate doing this thing, or I need to analyze this music with my headphones, and it's just not happening. So it really changed the way on how I used music and absorbed and used it, that I ended up learning sign language, because I was like, this is something I really want to develop a bit more.
Yeah.
If I do lose my hearing, I don't want to be afraid of that, and I actually want to connect with people that might not get the world in the way that we do, because there's that communication barrier, and there's that gospel barrier then too. So I sort of bring that into my music a little bit too. So I'll be signing and singing, it's just a big thing to use my hands to express more of that emotional side of my being, that really is able to talk to God in a way when my mouth can't do it, then the rest of my body just follows through. So getting to do that here at church has been awesome, because then I've been able to help use my musical background to help develop people's skills, but more importantly, skills M.T.S will teach you three things, right? Character, conviction, and competency. So those are the three C's that sort of underpin what you do as a ministry worker. But competency, your ability to do the job is actually not even a close first or second. Character is first. Above all else, they really want to, check your character, that you're, in line with the gospel, that you're setting your heart after God above all else. Because you can work on competency, that can come second, right? But, you really want to get your heart in the right spot for what you're doing. And then same with conviction, we know that we're convicted by the gospel, and that doesn't change. We don't make our own convictions. It's got to be set by Him. So definitely that was a big thing to help our music team grow a lot especially over COVID, when we were having to do videos, or doing songs online. It just wasn't the same, because you're not together as the church body. What you talked about before is church is not the building, it's the people that fill it, and we carry the church with us, because Jesus is with us wherever we go. So when we express that in such a way, I'm just this is cool. Obviously, I can just keep rattling on and on about it. But it's funny, because I think I did a sermon on it, a pastor Glenn or Gigi, he got us to each do a sermon on 4 different topics, and mine was on the magnification aspect, and explained that music is, not the only thing that magnifies God. It's actually our whole life, that can magnify God. So what we do here on a Sunday is not just a bit of singing and a bit of sitting there. You've got your whole life to put out,
I think God. On Sundays is a perfect opportunity to show others how you magnify.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to slide this in here.
Go for it.
Our church actually live streams every Sunday, and it has been for the whole of COVID, right up until today.
To now,
because I don't know how long it's going to go for. So if you want to see him singing, if you want to see him preaching, anything, kids church, because we were doing kids talks, please look up New Life Blacktown Church on YouTube. I will put the link in below, and you'll be able to see the sermons, because that's what we're going to talk about next, because I know that that's your least favorite subject. So in the years that I've known you, how many conversations, I'm just rattling in my brain, have we had about sermons and how late you've left them?
Yeah.
So if you don't know, well, for the people that don't know, writing a sermon is not a 1 minute or even a half an hour exercise. From what I've learned from talking to you and to some of the other people that preach in our church, it's a 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. It depends what the subject is, obviously.
Yep.
Because our church is not really. Well, it is at the moment, but it's not usually a topical church. It's a follow through the Bible, go through the whole book.
Yeah.
What is your least favorite thing about writing sermons besides finding the words?
Yeah. Oh, that's a tricky one. Yeah. So I think like what you said, like even like my trainer would say like, like a usual pastor might spend 20 hours of their week, working on this. So from the get-go, like I don't like writing essays. I'm like, like 1,000, 2,000 words is my max. But usually when I preach, it'll be like 3,500 words or 4,000 words, and I have to scale it back a bit so it fits in the time frame because I don't want people to be bored out of the brains.
What's the time frame? 10, 15 minutes or 15, 20 minutes?
So like for what we do here is usually about 22, I think is like usually what I go for. Like 20 to 25 is sort of like the allocated time. So some people might do a shorter sermon, like wrap it in 20 minutes. Sometimes if got a lot to go through sort of thing, unpacked it, or it might be like a Christmas message that might go for 25 minutes. But yeah, usually in that sweet spot of like 20 minutes is like when people start to like turn off a little bit. And that's
one of those people.
Yeah. and that I'm the same, like I need something to keep my brain going. Because like we used to have sermons that were like 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
That was like our church experience growing up, but it's just not the same anymore. So the way you teach and the way, like you said, application, like I did the same with the writers. Like I'd, go through my sermon ideas with him or go through what I've been looking at during the week in my other ministries with him. And that's how we unpack the word. Like you really want it to be application focused as well as expanding your mind into understanding and growing your love for God. So yeah, I think what made it hard for me was just like, yes, I'd set a deadline and then just like I'd kind of like let it go by and not really have done much. Like it'd still all be up in my head. Like I'd have all these ideas, and then whenever someone asked me, so how's it going? Like it could be my mom or dad or like my trainer Gigi, and it was just like, look, I've got the map figured out. I just don't actually have any words put together, or like I'll put all these quotes together and just like have some like mishmash of like, here's all the text and the things I want to say, but it's not like really cohesive. Like English was like my lowest scoring subject in high school. So I didn't feel me with a lot of confidence that I was asked to do that by like our previous pastor. He was like, yeah, I think this would be good for you. It just gave me flashbacks of my year 10 advanced English teacher saying the same thing. Go to advanced English for HSC, see how that goes. So it was definitely a big wrestling moment of like, I don't like, because even my music degree, we didn't do that many essays. So I was like, okay, it should be okay. But yeah, I knew that going into it, studying and writing essays was going to be my biggest struggle. But I think what helped was actually using people as a sounding board. And I know Beth, my fiance, will say this as well. Like, she's not used to then like, people asking for opinions and that sort of stuff. Like she'll happily just go with whatever they want. But for me, in whatever context, whether it's a relationship or a work context, I love like that sort of brainstorming, sort of stuff. So whenever I went to your guys' house on a weekly basis, I'd be like, my brain's just overflowing with ideas here, but I actually got to help like process it out.
Yeah, and it was lots of weeks last year spent processing your sermons and getting all of this out of here onto here. And then I was just laughing in my head just then because I remember a couple of times your dad's like ringing, when are you coming home? You haven't finished your sermon. Rah, 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 rah. Like, oh, you better go home, Pitapee. Like,
you're in trouble. And like we're 2 streets away. I was like, where does he think I am?
1 minute away or 30-second drive if you drive fast enough. So I think like I really like your sermons. Actually, because they have lots of application in it. Because my thing, like when I read the Bible, like I can read it and just be like, yeah, but how do I apply that?
Yeah.
And I feel like lots of people I talk to, whether they're here in church or out of church, is always like, yeah, but how do I apply it? Like that was written 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
In a time where it's completely different to now, obviously. And that's why like I really like people that preach application. Because that's the biggest struggle. Can't even get the word out. trying to figure out application. And like, you can talk to people about it and just be like, oh, what did you get from it? But they're always, lots of the conversations I have, it's never about application.
Yeah.
It's always like, oh, I think God was writing this. No, I don't think God was writing that. Next person.
Yeah.
And that's how it went. So in 2022, how many sermons did you do last year?
Well, I think over M.T.S, I probably did about 10. So I started like end of 2021. So like my first one on Father's Day, so September of 2021. And I think I did maybe 7 or 8 over that time to the end of 2022. And then I've done a couple even this year out of M.T.S where I've like helped out one of our other churches in Sutherland where they wanted me to do a youth talk or something like that. So it was a fully fledged sermon, but for a youth audience, and those ones were topical. So that was kind of interesting going back into that environment of like getting used to sermon writing again on top of a full-time job, on top of a relationship. And I'm like, okay, I don't have that time capacity to do it unless I've got, like you said, 3-4 months in advance to sort of like plan it out. Because the first time I said yes, I gave myself a month's notice. That was a mistake. So I was doing like an all-nighter the weekend before just to get it done.
Get it smashed out.
I just need to sit down and write because I don't have that capacity on a weekday to do it. I just need a weekend of like absolutely nothing. So yeah, like I think all in all, I did about 10 sermons over those couple of years. But I had that developing process of, like I said, doing study in M.T.S where you do 1 day a week to actually craft that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so like we'd start really small with like a 3 to 5 minute talk. And that's actually a lot harder than you think, because then you're trying to take these big ideas where you're used to doing like a 3-point sermon in 5 minutes. You're like, how do I actually teach something so simple? But it makes for like doing the Christian life really interesting if you have that 5-minute conversation with someone that you might not have again, sort of thing. So that was kind of a good challenge in its own way. And then we'd sort of work our way up from 5 minutes to 8 minutes to 12 minutes to 15 minutes to then we had 20-minute sermons, sort of thing. So it was a very comfortable progression and getting critiqued and feedbacked, not just by the teacher, but by our fellow students as well. So we could, quite, non-judgmentally sort of like open that space up a little bit.
Yeah, which I think Cornhill does really well. So I think about the school just then.
Yeah.
That it gives you guys a space to be able to practice that before you're chucked into your churches. Because how many people were in your class?
Yeah, so I'd say there's probably like about a dozen of us, because like, okay, so you mentioned the name of it. I'm going to plug this one here for it. It's called Cornhill. It's a program that you can actually sign up for. You don't have to be an apprentice to do it. You can just be someone who wants to learn more about God's word and how to do that. And so that's run by a guy named Peter Ryan. And so he sort of teaches this class not only here in Western Sydney in Rooty Hill at the MBM church, but also in Newtown. And so he's been running it in Newtown for a while, but MBM only started when I started M.T.S, so back in 2021, just after COVID. And so he gets in other like theological teachers and people that he's worked in with ministry to come teach these as well. So like we've had teachers like David Peterson is like a really good author. We've had David Cook, who's done awesome stuff on Acts and Romans. We had a guy named Simon Manchester who does his own preaching on the radio. Like he's like got some really like well-versed teachers in our space to help like work through that, but they're so humble about it. Hey, like they've been in ministry for like, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but here they are teaching, 20 something year olds or older, like I said, if they're not apprentices, they could just be part of their church community who want to, get more on it. And yeah, it's just awesome to have that sort of group, a variety of like ages, experiences, to have men and women with all kinds of walks of life and all kinds of ways of wanting to teach God's word. You're just like, wow, like this is so cool. You wouldn't get that in other places. Yeah. So
I will drop all the information in the description section. I'll get it off him.
Yeah.
And I'll put it all in there for anyone who wants to know any more information about Cornhill and M.T.S and COBIS and who else have we talked about on the church, obviously, if you want to know all that information. My last one is, well, probably not my last one. We'll see how this goes. So Shane wants to introduce this new thing on the interviews, and it's what's your favorite verse?
Ooh, okay.
1, 2, not just one.
Just one. Yeah. I think like growing up for a long time, I really loved the armor of God because I was huge into like medieval stuff. So that whole like God's armor and equipping that sort of thing for a long time, that was my go-to verse. And it's still a really fantastic thing to be reminded of, like equipping yourself, because then you see what the battle's like as you get older, like when life gets harder and it's not all this like fluffy sort of like notion of the fruit of the spirit, for example. Yeah, exactly. Like you're like, the fruit of the spirit, and it's like you got all the good aspects, but then you got to apply that, as we said, in the depths of the battle, right? So that one's still a go-to, but my other one is the one that sort of broke my brain a little bit when it came to understanding how seriously Jesus took his job to save people and how like not seriously I was taking my role in terms of serving God. So it was the end of uni. So I'd been leading youth group for probably like 2-3 years by this stage. So I'm like, like at that stage I was 21 thinking life's on track, I've got a much healthier space in terms of my relationship with God and my relationship with other people. But he really convicted me with this verse from Hebrews, and I was just reading it on the train because like I'd paired up with another friend and we said that we'd go through Hebrews independently, and so I was just reading Hebrews on my train rides, and I got to Hebrews chapter 9, and it says, but he has appeared once for all at the culmination of the ages to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. And it's this verse that really hit me because of like, well, I know what the word culmination means, kind of like it's like this building up point, like when you talked about unpacking sermons before and making it really simple. That's what I love doing for other people, because like I need it done for me. So when I looked at the word culmination, that it's like, it's the pinnacle, it's like the be all and end all, right? And so I'm like, well, and that was like the one translation that I was reading from that had that word in it, because like all the other translations, it just said that he has appeared at the end of the ages. I'm like, well, is it the end or is it like the pinnacle thing? Is like, because when I think of a pinnacle, I'm like a mountain. It's like there's nothing before or after that's better than that. So when I sort of thought about that, I'm like, well, if that's the case, like why is Jesus, this guy, this historical figure, not talked about in our school textbooks as much as it will be? Like we talk about the Roman Empire, we talk about like modern ancient history, but like Jesus hardly gets a mention, right? If it's this pinnacle in all of history, I was like, okay, fair enough. But obviously we live in a broken world, so that explains that. But then you get to like the church as a whole. Like, does the church across the world put Jesus at the center of everything? Is that the pinnacle for them? Like on that sort of like level, like does our church, does our Australian churches, does our global church make Jesus the focus? And I think there are some churches that do it really well, and you hope that a majority of them do, whether it's like, it doesn't have to be a mega church, it could be the underground church, right? You see that they really take Jesus at his word. But just coming from that environment of a church that changed a lot for us in the last 30 years that I've been here, we have seen that turn around, that we're starting to take things a lot more seriously, but we can do more. But then I had to look at myself. I was like, I don't know if I take God as seriously as he takes me seriously. If he's the be all and end all, like what's my life accounting for? Like, what am I putting my work toward? Am I just living for this life, or am I living for him and for others, in that sort of bigger picture perspective? Because I was like, I just had to break down at that moment. I just stopped where I was. I was like, nah, I can't.
I'm rubbish.
Yeah, I got to rest
I get that.
Yeah. So the fact that he'd done all that, I was like, okay. So then I read the rest of Hebrews, and it was like this beautiful thing of like, it talks about this old and new covenant stuff, that like old covenant was a lot of people having to make sacrifices and sort of fix that relationship with God. And then the new covenant is Jesus is that sacrifice, and there's nothing that you can do that makes up for that. So it was this whole rubbish thing. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, well, Jesus has covered everything. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's a relief. Like, man, like it's really in the sink for that one. So Yeah, that one is a really groundbreaking for me.
That's a big gospel uppercut, that one.
Yeah.
Fully get that. And I think like what I want to say, I'm gonna say it. I feel like lots of people don't actually understand that.
Yeah.
And they don't understand why Christians are Christians. And they don't understand why would God do that.
Yeah.
And why God does lots of things. Honestly, as a Christian, I don't even understand why God does half the things that he does, to be honest. And I'm never going to try and understand that because that's a mess.
Yeah.
But I feel like for you to be openly talking about how you were just sitting on a train, like it didn't happen in this big, got struck by lightning, almost died type of way, or it wasn't even at church, really.
No.
Or you weren't even doing anything for church, you were just reading on a train. And I feel like people need to know that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not big moments when you get it.
Yeah.
Like, for mine, wasn't a big moment. It was just, rubbish. And that's all it was. Like, you rubbish person. Okay, I got it. Like, there's no... I think that's the hardest thing for people to hear, and the hardest thing for people to admit as well. When you can call yourself rubbish and know that you're actually rubbish and be like convicted by that, that's hard.
100%.
But it's easy with God, but it's hard.
Because it's the culture that we have around us. And I was reading this on someone's Facebook post today where like there's the things that like Jesus did not say this, right? Like Jesus did not say.
I did see that.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You know? And so it's like Jesus did not say follow your heart. He said, no, deny yourself and follow me, pick up your cross. I'm like, there's so many things that like there's sacrifice involved, like you said, like there's that, you know, like you could go with what you want, but where's that going to get you? Like it's that whole, you know, what if I gain the whole world but forfeit up my salvation? You know, like could I actually consider giving up what is beyond this life for just, you know, some sort of fleeting happiness here? And so that was like a real big gospel uppercut too. You know, just like
good old gospel uppercuts.
Yeah.
So my last little bit is we will be interviewing you again, but we will be interviewing you with Beth.
Yeah. Cool.
He didn't actually mention, he mentioned her like a couple times, but that's like his fiance. So she will be on the next one. Hopefully soon. Fingers crossed. But is there anything that you could say to our viewers?
Yep.
Because I want them to, like, we're real people, guys. We're not out here portraying that we're perfect Christians. And I said that in my interview too. I am the least perfect Christian that you can get, to be honest. But is there anything that you can say to anyone watching this video that you wish that someone had said to you when you started your journey, even though you've been born in the church and bred in it, when you actually started your journey? Yeah,
that's true. And I think I often think about the things that I sort of like look back on when I was getting mentored at that age, how much of a difference it made. What can I say to the viewers? I would say that it's very well worthwhile investing in those relationships that you need people to check in on you, that know you openly and honestly. You know, like don't go around trying to keep this whole facade up, you know, going to church, doing your thing, like playing the part, like actually get people who know you on a genuine level and are going to ask you the tough questions. And also do it in such a way that they care about you too. You don't want people who are just going to like grill you. You want actually people that are that help journey with you out of the muck of it, because that's what Jesus does. And so he uses those kind of people in your life. Because that's what I got when I was like in my like late teens, working through those moments in life. I had to stop, you know, keeping people out and actually let them in a little bit. So you have to be vulnerable. Like that's tough. And especially I guess maybe like, and I don't think it's any more tough for men to be vulnerable than women. Like I think it's tough on both sides that we don't want to show that weakness to other people. And we just want to look like we've got it all together. But it's, you know, okay to be that sort of vulnerable with those people that you can trust. And sometimes that doesn't always work out, because sometimes people have been vulnerable and you get hurt, and that's a risk, you know. And you just want to take the time to get to know a few people personally that'll help you be accountable in that way. I think is a really big changer to get you through different seasons of life, like when you change like I said, changing from an all Christian environment to then going to uni, like I had 2 solid friends who were there with me the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see them as much anymore, but I could still pick up the pieces,
Yeah.
you know, and just like catch up with them. And it's like not much has changed. But you need those people in different spaces as well.
Yeah.
You know, like I think I heard about this the other day, like having that whole best friend thing. Like when you're in like primary school, you have that like that one best friend.
Oh yeah.
But as you grow older, you sort of grow to have
Groups
numerous
of best
friends. Yeah. and it's funny because like you'll have that thing of like they could be your best friend, but you might not necessarily be their best friend because they'll have their own circle, and that's okay. Like you don't have to be offended that like you're not everyone's best friend. And I think that was, again, as a people pleaser, like you know, you're just like learning, oh, okay, like their happiness or my happiness doesn't rely on each other. And I think like Beth will speak into that as well, because like we're now in that space of like we're best friends. So it's like that sort of like it's only changed in like the last year because like we were complete strangers before that. So
you were.
Yeah. And that's not metaphorical. That is like 100%
literally complete strangers.
Like no existence whatsoever. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting. I think in that sense of like, if I can encourage, you know, anyone watching this, is that develop some really good trusted friendships with people who love God and can help you grow, and you can sort of sharpen each other. Like even for me and the writers, like even though it's like my math sucks, 17 years I think between us. So there's like a reasonable gap there. But even my one-to-ones who are only 5 years younger than me, there's like you're working that maturity between each other. You know, it's not like I'm there to help like mentor him in a way, but like we're both also on our own journeys to then work closer in our relationship.
And I think you learn both ways.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's what I do. I learn from my mentor because I'm the mentoree, and then the same vice versa. Yeah. What I was going to say though, for people who are on the other side of that, like me, I am for you. It's lots to do with it. Holding space, i.e.
That's true.
His space will be my couch sometimes, where he just wants to go to sleep, and we're just like, but he's gone to sleep. Okay, turn off all the lights and go to bed. And we'll just leave from there, and it's fine. Like we don't. It's okay, because Shane and I are just like, oh, he must have needed to sleep. So like, or it's another. Come and have a feed and sit down for 5 hours. Like whatever. That holding space allows people to be vulnerable with you. And like for people who can't communicate or have trust issues, it's actually a big thing for someone to hold space for them. So I'm very thankful that God has brought you and now Beth and your parents actually into our lives, and I look forward to see what happens in the future. But church-wise, what is on the cards for you next year?
So that's going to be a big change, because like me and Beth talked about this for a while. So we probably got into our 6-month mark of dating, and so I'll give it like a brief synopsis. Is that
coming up your father's 1 year soon?
So like we met in September of last year. We're now in October, and we started dating in November. So soon, it's pretty soon. So we met online, but I also knew that she went to a church nearby in the area, and when I like sort of dug a little bit deeper into finding out like she was like at this specific church, I'm like, wait, I actually know that church quite well. You know, sort of had that conversation of like, oh, so you're at this church, you know this person, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we developed a lot more from that. But we had to essentially at some point have the conversation of where are we going to go to together. And so because I'd finished M.T.S here at this church, I'd been here for a while. It's like, well, naturally I could quite comfortably stay here. But like we sort of had that sort of awareness that like we've both got needs that we bring to the table, and we want to do this together. So at like the 6-month mark, we sort of started the conversation a little bit, but we picked it up, you know, another month or two after that sort of thing. Like, so we sort of got a few things out on the table of what we want to offer in terms of serving the kingdom and what our gifts are and how we want to serve together. So that's our first big thing was like, how are we going to serve our church, but also how can we like be around the church? Like how can we be available for it? You know, if there's things that aren't going to work, what's going to stop that? So I know for our schedules, like she's a shift worker and I'm a, usual 7 to 3 worker. So I've got quite an availability to go to her church when we were like dating, so I could visit quite often. But for her to visit this church, it was a lot more testing because she'll be needing to sleep or prep for work on a Sunday, and that's her routine, and that's totally okay because we talked about the church not just being Sunday church, but what happens through the week. And so she needed that regularity of something during the week. And so we sort of come to that conclusion after a couple of more conversations of like, actually, we should make a decision on this soon before we get too serious so that we can actually start working towards that. And I think we just naturally knew that me going there was going to be the thing, but I think we both had that sense of like wanting to serve the other person. So she like ideally still wanted to come across.
Yeah.
Like it's never like she was like, no, I don't want to be here. She was always like, you've got a lovely family. Like you got you guys, you got like so many people you're connected with. And she's like happy to join that. But I'm like, at the same time, if it's going to pull her away from an environment that she can't be in all the time sort of thing, I'm like, well, we can still stay like geographically connected here and like still check in with a few people. But even if I like move up the road to her church, like I think that's going to be the space where we can work in well together, start our new life together when we get married and do all that sort of stuff. So it's just a natural progression, I think, in that sense of like, okay, this is what we've been doing for 9 months now, like, let's make that sort of like our official next step sort of thing at the start of next year.
Which is exciting. So I didn't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you it now on YouTube even. Shane and I have actually been talking about that whole thing, like literally from the moment we met Beth, we were like, that conversation's going to be interesting. And then just like as it progressed, because obviously we're so happy for you and Beth and like for you that you found Beth.
Yep.
We were just like, when we started hearing how crazy hectic her life is and everything, we were like, nah, he's got to go. Like, it's like, he's got to go. And it actually says in the Bible that the man is to leave his family and go and start a family with her. And I've had people like say, oh, but you have Phill over all the time. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but he knows where we live. He has our phone numbers. We're not going to be like, no, you can't come to yours because you don't come to our church anymore, you weirdo. Like, it's not happening. No. So we are so very happy. That's why I was like, yes, you made this decision. When you told me. And I'm so looking forward to seeing both of you get married first off, and then to see what happens after that.
And I think that's the biggest thing that's sort of helped the process as well. Like you've only known us for that sort of space of 3 to 5 years, but it's made such an impact. And it's like when I had teachers like that at school, like I had teachers that came in at the end of my schooling for 2 years that made like an equal contribution and like sort of support network for people that have been there for 10 years sort of thing. I was just like, wow, like this is really like incredible to know that we're so loved on that. Whatever choice we make, we're going to be so well supported. So me going to that community, I know I'll be supported there, but also with the support of like you guys, like people who understand that it's okay to move on from those sort of things. And be able to do that well and help finish things well here as well. Like, letting people know it's okay. I'm not, just because I'm moving out.
To another country or anything.
Like
going off the grid, like that ain't.
Exactly. The church is going to thrive. It's going to be so cool to see all that continue on because they're going to be the ones continuing the work happen.
We're
so
excited to see the growth of you and Beth. Well, yes, we're excited for our church, obviously. But like more so to see you two grow.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just going to say this because Shane just wants to be a babysitter. When that happens, okay. So we're fully excited and we're so blessed to be in your life. But thank you very much for doing this interview.
Thanks, Lisa.
Well, good. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I've loved every minute of it.
Right. That's
real talk.
Signing off.
See ya.